Are you looking to get into bourbon, want it to be relatively cheap, easy to get, and just want to know what to buy? You've come to the right place. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, today we are taking a look at my top 5 supermarket bourbons, although admittedly when I'm running through this in my head I think there actually might be more than 5, but they'll kind of come in groups and it'll make some sort of sense. I'm doing this video because last year I did a top 5 supermarket Scotch whiskies to buy to get you into Scotch, and in response to that someone said, can you do the same but for bourbon here in the UK, because well ultimately we don't have a vast amount of choice and therefore knowing which ones to go for are even more important. So no messing around, I'm going to get straight into it, and the first thing is kind of the obvious question: do you like Jack Daniels? And I mean, do you really like Jack Daniels? Not do you like it with Coke, can you actually sit there and drink the regular number 7 on its own? Have you tried any of the other variants, namely things like Gentleman Jack? That is okay, but certainly not one that I would offer up as a way to get into bourbon. It's quite mellow, it's quite filtered, and ultimately quite different to a lot of the other stuff. But if you kind of like old number 7, and yes, it is a Tennessee whiskey, which is also a bourbon, but it's not, but it still kind of is. So anyway, if you really like number 7, this is where you should go first. Jack Daniels Bonded, or in the case of this bottle, bottled in bond. Now what you'll find in your supermarket looks slightly different, and I'll put it on the screen now. This is effectively the same stuff, but before it became available in the supermarkets under that name. It was a Traveller Special kind of release, and therefore it came in a slightly different bottle. Now to be honest, it's not my favourite. It's not one that I would openly recommend, but if you really like number 7, then it's just an amped up version. Basically it's kind of getting closer to barrel proof. It's 50% or 100 proof, and yeah, it's just a hotter, spikier, richer version of number 7, but probably not for everyone. That said, if you think you kind of like Jack Daniels, you definitely love a Jack and Coke, well, there is another offering from JD worth looking at, and that of course is the single barrel. Now again, the one I have here is slightly different. This is the single barrel strength. That one you're not going to find down your local Tesco, but the regular single barrel you will, or at least in many supermarkets. Now for all of these and the one before, because I forgot to say it before, I'm going to put the prices at the current time of recording on screen, both kind of regular and offer prices, because well I can't remember all of them for one go, to be honest. So but they'll be on the screen now and with each bottle that I cover. But yes, the Jack Daniels single barrel regular version is fantastic, to be honest. It's just nicer, bigger, rounder, just slightly sweeter. It's just better than the regular number 7 by a lot of ways, to be honest. It's a good step in the right direction if you know you kind of like that Jack Daniels profile and want to try something more exciting. It's worth a go, but probably not the cheapest on this list. Now my next question is, do you like Scotch? If the answer is yes, Woodford Reserve might be a great intro into bourbon. Now don't get me wrong, a lot of bourbon drinkers actually aren't keen on this, so if you're getting into the real nitty gritty of bourbon, it might not be the best example. But Woodford Reserve, for me, it just offers something a little bit more akin to an international whiskey. It's a little bit spicier, got a few more of those medicinal notes, and well, ultimately, yeah, I just find it a bit of a bridging gap. Now I do quite enjoy this, but as I say, I just don't feel like it's a proper intro to bourbon. So yeah, we're kind of doing the outliers at the beginning, and now we're getting into the real stuff. If you've been looking up beginner bourbon on the internet, there is no doubt you will have come across Buffalo Trace, and it is definitely on my list. It is a beautiful, middle of the road, fairly sweet, covers all the main bases that a bourbon should, and it is delicious. However, something to be aware of in the UK is that we do not get this at the regular 45% 90 proof version that they do in the US, and as a result a lot of those rave reviews kind of don't come across. I've reviewed this many times against other things and on its own. You can go check those videos out, and in effect I say it's good, but it's probably not worth the hype that you might have been seeing elsewhere. But I think that's a lot to do with the ABV. I know it sounds like 5% or 10 proof points isn't really going to make that much of a difference when you're trying something for the first time. But trust me, it's good, but just loses out a little bit, I think, because of those proof points. And I can kind of prove it, and that is with its big brother, Eagle Rare. The reason I bought this in is because it is available in some UK supermarkets. Tesco have definitely got it. I think Waitrose do as well. And this is effectively kind of the same stuff. Now, it is more expensive, it's aged for longer, it's a 10-year-old actual age statement on this bottle, it is the proper 45% or 90 proof, and well, it's just better as a result. Now, some people say that this is a little bit muted. That could be due to that extra maturation. Quite often people don't realise that actually longer time in a barrel doesn't mean more intense flavour. It might take on more barrel notes, but it might lose some other sharp edges. So it is a bit smoother for sure, but that for me really is just, yeah, all a good thing. Both of these are fantastic. If you're going for the budget and just want a slow, cheaper introduction, go for the Buffalo Trace because it can be found really cheap. The Eagle Rare, not so cheap, but if you fancy spending a few more quid on that first endeavour, you could go a lot worse than Eagle Rare. And to be honest, this might ruin you because, well, this is better than a lot of bottles, a lot more expensive than it, if I am totally honest. At least in my opinion. And next up we have another bottle that I have raved a lot about on this channel, and it is Wild Turkey's 101. This, much like some of the other things we've discussed, actually is just an amped up version of regular Wild Turkey, as in it's 101 proof or 50.5%, whereas the regular, actually can't remember whether it's 40 or 42 or whatever, but anyway, it's a stronger version of the regular. The regular just doesn't do it for me. I don't think it's that good. It's a bit watery, it's a bit bland. Somehow, amp the proof up on it and this just opens up. I think this is a fantastic adventure into a lot of different bourbon flavours. It is one of the breadthier at a relatively cheap price point. It is amped up. It's not the cheapest. It's nowhere near as cheap as the regular Wild Turkey. But again, some supermarkets do have it. And it's not completely exorbitantly expensive, as kind of the actual price will be on the screen now. But, you know, it's solid, and I just feel like this gives you a broader range. You are more likely to find something in here that you like about bourbon. On the flip side, it has a wide breadth of flavour, so you also might find something in there that you don't like, but yeah, it really just is solid and is a massive top contender for me. Next up we have Bullet. This is not the biggest range of flavours and it's not every bourbon drinker's favourite choice, but it's quite a rye heavy bourbon. You'll hear people talk about bourbons and rye whiskies. Well, actually in terms of formulation they are often the same or very similar, except for the fact that a bourbon has at least 51% corn in it and rye has at least 51% rye. This is a high rye bourbon and, well, as a result has a lot of those rye, spicy, fruity, kind of zesty notes is the word that I'm looking for, and falling over my words there, but you know what I mean. It's got a little bit more spike to it, but I find it very endearing. I think this is a great mixer actually. If you are kind of still not sure whether you want to drink it straight or on its own, I do both with this, and I think it is, yeah, it's just, I like it, but I like rye. So if you want to know if you like rye or not, yeah, Bullet Bourbon is not a bad way to go, but it might not be the safest absolute starter bet, and I've saved that for last. And the safest bet of them all is Maker's Mark. Now, I know a lot of bourbon aficionados, if you're watching, will have turned off at this point. It is not the best thing out there. It's a little bit dull. It's not the most flavourful thing going. However, I just think it's the safest bet. Like, it's nice, it's sweet, it's got a lot of different tones in there. None of them are too strong. It's just good. Like, it's solid. It's a good mixer. It's good on its own. I struggle to really say much bad about it, other than that maybe it's not the most flavourful. But remember, if you're trying to get into something, the most flavourful isn't where you want to be. Honestly, if it was me just going by this one bottle, it'd be the Eagle Rare or the Wild Turkey 101, but both of those are not at the cheapest price point. When we come down to the cheaper price points, the Buffalo Tracers and so on, actually, whilst this might be a couple of quid more, it is the higher proof. This is coming in at 45, so 90 proof, same as the Eagle Rare. Yes, you're not getting as many flavours or as many rich flavours, but yeah, I don't know. Something about it just works, and, well, the fancy wax top just makes everyone feel pretty, doesn't it? Right then, this is every bottle that we've just talked about, and as you can see, it's definitely more than 5. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bottles, but they are kind of grouped in pairs. You've got things like the Buffalo Trace and the Eagle Rare, which are from the same distillery. They're kind of the same stuff, but one's just an aged, amped up version. Got 2 from Jack Daniels, and so on. Anyway, so 5 in a few. But the reason I put them in this order is because this is actually my preference order, just try and give some context. The Jack Daniel's Bonded I actually don't like, right? But if you really, really like number 7 already, then it's worth a go. That's all I can say about it, but it's really not one for me. The Woodford, I like, but I'm bored of, which is why it's coming down here. I seem to have had a lot of it, and it's fine. It does not quite doing the bourbon thing though. That's the other reason it's ranked quite low. I grab this if I'm not sure what I want, if that makes sense. If I'm in a bourbon mood, I'm in a Scotch mood. If I'm not sure, Woodford's a good shout. Then in with the Bullet, I know it's not that good really, but actually I have this kind of affinity for it. I just love that rye hit. The Maker's Mark, I'll be honest, I've not had for a while, so I'm kind of doing this from memory, but it's just a solid middle ground and it's fantastic. And I'm actually kind of torn between these two, because if the Buffalo Trace was the US version, it would definitely be sat here, maybe even further up the list. But with the UK version, kind of toing and throwing. So if it comes down to these and there's 10 quid difference, just go for the cheaper one, honestly. Then we're in for the Jack Daniel's single barrel. This is meant to represent the regular single barrel, not the barrel strength, which I've got here. But anyway, it's fantastic. It's a great sipper, but it's not necessarily going to give you the best impression of bourbon as a whole, because it is a Tennessee whiskey, not just a bourbon. So it's a bit more filtered and so on. But that said, it's solid. It's really, really good. The 101, as I've talked about many times, I think is absolutely incredible. But the Eagle Rare for me, as a single bottle of just something a little bit more special, yeah, that takes the top spot. So there you have it. Are you going to try some? Let me know what you're going to get in the comments below. And yeah, that really is everything. That is your top 5 and a few UK supermarket bourbon whiskies to go and try this year. And that really is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already subscribed, if you will be so kind. And I'll catch you next time, where I promise we'll actually do some whiskey drinking, because I said that in the last video and, well, I've just been blabbing on again. Cheers.